This is my ancient Greek-themed tower defense game, Atlanta T.D, which I started working on just under 3 years ago, and the first thing I ever built for this project was the map generator. Of course, the map generator didn't look like this. In fact, the project didn't even look like this. It looked like this. But I have been working on this tool for my game the entire time. There's been breaks, there's been a few weeks where I haven't touched it, but as the project grew and the demands of what was needed in the game expanded, I had to keep iterating on it. And although there are still some areas that I'm not fully convinced of yet, I think it's at a stage where I can finally talk about what I'm doing with it and where I plan on taking it. So let's start with the background. A problem I have identified with tower defense games are the maps. Let's take the easiest example, Bloons Tower Defense 6. We have a massive library of maps with varying levels of difficulty. Amazing. But the problem here is that there will always be a solution to the gameplay. You can recreate one for one an exact game that someone else has already done with no differences. And I think that takes away a lot of the challenge and fun of this genre. So I made a decision to do randomly generated maps. However, this comes with its own set of challenges aside from coding the procedural generation. Tower defense games are notoriously difficult to scale and balance correctly. You either become too overpowered too quick, or you get overwhelmed with the enemies from a single wave. So having a set map allows you to streamline a lot of the gameplay testing. You can find strategies that work or don't work, or map variations that are easy or hard. My solution is scaling the map difficulty to the game. As you play and as you make choices, the maps will reflect that. You as the player can choose to have an easier run by always taking the easier maps. I have 3 varying levels of difficulties for the maps. Easy are just single paths. Medium maps have some branches, so shortcuts that enemies can take. And hard maps have branches and can contain extra start or end options. But what about the comfort of a video game? There is a whole demographic of players who like routine, who like to pick up a game and know exactly what to expect. It can be a therapeutic or relaxing experience. So will procedural maps take that away? I honestly don't think so, simply because there's always going to be a bit of strategy involved, but there can still be a metagame built in. There'll always be optimal placement of towers, there'll always be upgrades that are better than others. That won't change, and that aspect of the game's design is where I'm leaning the player into. So let's actually get into how I'm building the maps and the pathing. The core of the map is always a 19 by 19 grid, and if you've watched my previous video, you will know that this map creator supports the different biomes that I will have in my game, which aside from the enemies you will encounter, will contain visual changes. For now, I just have my main biome, Etherion, and placeholder art for our second biome, Nixara. Now, the first thing that happens in the map generation is it creates the default level layout without any objects. This is our walls and our wire hanging. Let's get into the path generation, starting with easy paths. For simplicity in the game's design, these tiles up here are always considered for the start, and these tiles are always considered for the end. When the generation starts, it'll randomly select a starting path from the possible start positions. There's a few rules for how the path should be generated, but there's always a failsafe so it can bend the rules slightly. First, there are minimum consecutive movements that have to occur. This is so we don't get crazy bends on the path like this. I also have a maximum consecutive movement that can occur, and obviously this is to stop a direct line to the end from occurring. I want the maps to be challenging, not impossible. For each map difficulty, I also define a minimum number of paths and a maximum number of paths. This is so that they stay simple and don't overtake the screen. Then there's the map constraints, so it always has to stay within the walls. To extend on the wall constraint, if it does happen to reach a wall, then the options that it has as a possible movement, regardless of the consecutive movement counter, will always be to move down. And that's because if it tried to move up, even if the pathing continued, it would eventually wrap into itself. There will be no way out. The final rule is it can't move twice in the same direction if it's going horizontal. Again, this is a failsafe for a case where it does move in a direction, let's say left, then it tries to move left again. It will just wrap itself and be locked. Now, having these rules in place doesn't mean the map will always work 100% of the time. Like I said, it can bend some of these rules, but will only do so as a last resort. If a path doesn't reach the end, or too many paths have been placed, or not enough paths have been placed, then the generation will fail and it'll try again with a new map. The path continues being generated until it reaches one of the defined end positions. And just like that, we have our easy, simple map. Since all of the object placement logic is the same for all the map difficulties, I will save that for the end. For medium maps, it will run the exact same simple path code. Once the path is generated, a new function is called, which creates branches in the pathing list. During the generation, we always keep track of all the paths in a list. Then while it's branching, I will take a random path from that list and I add it to a new hash set of used paths. With this path selected, it checks the immediate neighboring tiles, and what it is looking for here is if it can branch into that position. It first checks if that neighbor exists in the used paths list, then if it is a path in that position as well, and then it checks if the path is already connected. If it is connected, then it'll ignore that neighbor. If it's a path that isn't in the used paths list and it isn't connected, then that can be a usable direction and is stored in the list. It does this in all directions, and if it gets to the end and the usable direction list has an item in it, it'll use that. If it doesn't, then it just checks a different path. When it finds a successful neighbor, it has a job of updating the tile data for itself and for that neighbor's position. Then it grabs all 8 neighbors of both the tiles and adds it to the used paths list. This is so that we can avoid what I call messy branches, or branches that are too close together. It repeats this process a number of times. This is so that there is a minimum amount of branches that do need to be created. If it finishes and the create branches function doesn't create enough branches, it'll restart the entire map generation. Otherwise, we have a successful medium map. Next is the hard maps. Hard maps are a bit of a tricky one because they can have multiple starts, multiple ends, and branching positions. So let's get into it. It starts again with a simple path generation. Then from here, instead of going into the branching positions, it'll attempt to create extra starts or ends. For the extra starts, it'll choose an unused start position that is also a minimum distance away from the initial starting position. This is again so that the map can have proper variation. Then it'll run the simple path function, and what it is doing here is trying to get to the end. However, where it differs to the normal path generation is if it runs into an existing path, then it will branch into it instead, because we know that there will be an end to that original path. In this stage, it can create a maximum of 2 extra starting positions for 3 total, but it also doesn't need to create any extra starting positions. For the extra end positions, it's sort of similar, but obviously in the reverse. It makes sure to start far away from an existing end position, and it'll just build backwards. Again, either until it hits an existing path, or it reaches one of the possible start tiles. Again, in this stage, it can create a maximum of 2 extra ends, but it also doesn't need to. Finally, after the start and ends have been attempted, it will call the branching function and attempt to connect 2 random paths. And like that, we have our hard maps. Job's not done here completely. There are still a few more internal checks that need to happen for all of the maps. The first is that it validates that the path generated is actually a possible path. For all starting paths, there is a definite end position associated. Since we are storing this as map data in the game, and since there will be thousands of possibilities, we also store every unique path combination. So every path, every branch, and every start and end possibility. This check also makes sure that there aren't any looping. Paths have to be unique for an option to be stored. The next is that for every path option found, there is a minimum number of positions to reach from start to end. And this is for the case in branching, where it can create a branch that can cut half the map away. Then, of course, there is a maximum number of paths. If there are too many and we're not left with enough empty options, then obviously the player is going to have a very hard time playing. If it gets through all of that, then we officially have a successful map, and we can finally get to the object placement. After the paths are finalized, we look for all of the remaining tiles within our walls that don't have a path on them. Then we can litter them with a random assortment of objects. You might notice that there are some bigger objects that occupy a larger grid space, and the algorithm used for that is basically my take on the product defect problem from LeetCode, which pretty much just involves looping through the grid and finding large unoccupied locations in a square, and placing the bigger objects. These bigger objects are also the first of the random objects to be attempted, so that they have the highest chance of still spawning in successfully. Once the objects are in and the path is validated, the map is then stored as an addressable JSON file that my game can interpret and reuse for further editing or to be played in the game. That's what nearly 3 years of working on a map generator looks like. There's a bit more functionality with it that I didn't go over too in depth, like I can still hand make maps if I want and edit individual components, but the ultimate idea is that the game can just generate thousands of map possibilities at the push of a button. So, there you have it. This is my map generator that I've been working on. What do you think? Has all this effort been worth it? Am I just wasting my time? Is this something you want to see in a tower defense game? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, let me know what is something you think is missing from the tower defense genre. As much as I'm building this game for me, I'm building it just as much for the player. So your input is extremely valuable to me and how I design the game. Anyway, thanks for watching today's video. As always, follow all the socials, click all the buttons. It really helps build engagement and gets my videos seen by more people. Thanks.